The next of our keynote speakers is Tony Singleton. Tony goes by the grand job title of Director of Digital Commercial Programme at GDS. What that means in simple terms is he's the G-Cloud man, also responsible for some of the other key purchasing frameworks as well, like the Digital Services Framework, Digital Marketplace and so forth. As I'm sure Tony will tell you, G-Cloud has been generally hailed as one of the big successes of the digital programme within the Cabinet Office. Over £250 million, I think, spent through G-Cloud now, and an estimate that as much again has been saved compared to old ways of buying technology in the past. But of course, certainly from our perspective from Computer Weekly reporting on some of this, we've been writing a lot as well about how, by comparison, local government seems to have made less use of what G-Cloud can potentially do for you. So I'm sure Tony is going to give you some of the reasons why this is something that perhaps you could be taking more advantage of. Tony's going to talk again for about 20 minutes or so. There'll be an opportunity for you to put your questions to Tony, so please do take this opportunity while you've got him here to put any queries or questions that you have for him. So otherwise, Tony, over to you.
Thanks for the introduction, Brian. I'm sure that's just alienated me from everyone in the audience. So that's really what I want to talk about. That's really what I see my job as being, about transforming the way that government and indeed the wider public sector, if we can call it. I'll use government throughout, spelled with a small g. Wider public sector tends to be a bit of a mouthful. But why is that important? Well, public sector IT infrastructure has grown over several decades to meet needs of users. But the way that's been done has resulted in increasingly costly infrastructure and has also hindered the ability to modernise and fully exploit developments in technology. So continue placing ever-increasing IT contracts has made it very difficult to achieve large cross-government economies of scale, deliver systems that are flexible and responsive to demand, to take advantage of new technologies, and also to allow the public sector to buy in a way that encourages a dynamic and responsive supply marketplace. So in the future, rather than over-specify requirements, we are making better use of commodity IT solutions, which is what I want to cover off today. So just to give you, you may have heard this before, but just to give you a bit of background to that, the way government used to deliver services, design services, would there be some sort of policy initiative, some idea, maybe from a minister, maybe from a head of a department, wherever it is within that department, to deliver, let's say, a new service. So first of all, there's sort of thinking about the service, what it should be, leading then to think, okay, so what's the IT solution that needs to go with that? So we'll spend some time thinking about what those requirements might be. We might hire in consultancy firms, spending tens, hundreds of thousands of pounds. At the end of the 6 months, we then get delivered 6 or 7 lever arch files full of, this is the requirement, this is what you want, this is how you need to deliver it. Then go away and enter into what was, or what is, the procurement process. Don't know how many people have been involved in the OG processes. As you know, with a fair wind, you might be able to get a contract in place 9 months after you've started that. So again, 12, 18 months downstream, you might finally start building something. Again, if you're really lucky, 2 years after you first started the initiative, then the first copy of the service, or the first iteration of that service will go live. It doesn't, nobody uses it. It doesn't meet users' needs because nobody asks the users, the technology is out of date, and it hasn't really delivered what it is that you want it to deliver. So going forward, now using Agile as a new way of doing things. So first of all, going into a discovery phase, talking to users, working out what the user need is, coming up with an early idea, maybe even possibly a prototype, much better understanding of what teams you need to run and deliver the service, again, normally taking about 3 months. Then going into the alpha phase, building a prototype that again can be used to test people's needs, People can actually sort of see things, users can see the service, play with the service, let you know what needs to change. Then issuing live beta, which users can actually use in earnest to go away and to deliver the service. But again, it's about iterating, about changing the way of doing things. Finally, issuing, going out with a live service, meets digital by default service standards and so on. But again, once that service is live, it's about continually asking users what they want to do, continually improving, continually iterating. So again, the phrase you often see, no more big IT. So in the past, when there's been a big problem, normally the solution to that was go out with a very large procurement and a very large system. Again, that's no longer true. The success in doing that has been very, very limited in the past. About 1 or 2% success rate. It just doesn't work anymore. We've all heard about the large IT failures that have happened, or so-called black swans in project management terms. There's just no more space now for these large outsourced IT programs. We need to give people the right tools that they need, and we want departments to be able to choose the devices that they want, with services delivered through the cloud using the browsers. It's about giving people tools that they want to work with, rather than providing the monolithic tools that they have to use. So again, moving to smaller, more manageable projects will also improve timescales and reduce risks of project failure. Including more defined exit strategies also ensures that we're not locked into contracts year after year with no way out. But it's not only us, UK government, that's thinking along those lines. The South Australian government have done exactly the same thing. It says there, from now on, we're not going to start on any more large ICT projects because we know that large IT projects run a higher risk of failure. So what we're doing things now is about focusing on user needs, it's about commissioning, not procuring, and it's about launching and discovering. Again, a very good example was reading about the other day from Kingston and Sutton, where main driver about both councils were at a point where they needed to make a significant investment in IT platforms. So again, rather than doing the same old way of doing things, again, looking at a new shared approach using cloud infrastructure. So a traditional IT procurement generally ends up with a service that is bespoke for the buyer. The procurement process is based around the fact that you don't quite know what it is you want at the outset, and at the end of that, you probably don't quite know what it is you're going to get. So you then get locked into lengthy and expensive change control processes. There's many, many stories around about £30,000 to change a couple of words on the page, and so on. So I don't need to remind you of those here. The G-Cloud is the opposite way of doing things, where the majority of services are available to anyone via an open market. So the G-Cloud is set up a framework of off-the-shelf quality services on that pre-existing framework. So it means you're looking at what G-Cloud has to offer, and there are something like 17,000 services on there that you can choose to meet your need. But all this needs a new way of thinking, moving away from the traditional way of doing things to new cloud-based services, and change isn't easy. It's not to say there haven't been a lot of successes, they have. Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead, in 18 months they've moved from a fully in-house maintained infrastructure to a cloud computing environment with multiple providers. And also planning to reduce down from 300 applications in the next 12 months to 12 to 36 months. And also using software as a service is enabling them to embrace Agile as a technique for continually improving services that they have delivered. Also, moving to cloud-based infrastructure will allow departments, local authorities to share more resources and those services themselves. Again, Peterborough Council recently done the same thing, migrating the majority of its on-site infrastructure onto the cloud. So, just want to touch on now the digital marketplace and what that is. So, we are bringing about lasting change to where the government, and indeed the wider public sector, so open to anybody, the way they buy digital and technology. So it's about providing a tool that's clearer, simpler and faster to use. As part of our ongoing drive to create a more open and competitive marketplace. So frameworks such as GCloud and the Digital Services Framework mean that government can buy what it needs from a very wide range of suppliers. So it will become a single place for all of the public sector to go and buy what it needs to buy, design, build cloud services. It does meet the Digital Service Standard, but our main priority is about making it easy for buyers to find what they want. We know with the existing cloud store, again, I'm not sure if everybody, has anybody used the cloud store here? It's always not been that easy to find exactly what it is you want. So we worked on a new user design for the cloud store through the digital marketplace, making it easier, introducing new intelligent search, and also improved ways of browsing, improved ways of filtering. It's there now live as the alpha. It's fully up to date with the GCloud services, so it can actually be used to find what it is that you want to what it is you want to find. We're also working with suppliers as well, because a lot of the service descriptions on there, to most users, or most buyers, including me, you look at a service description and you try to puzzle out, well, what is it I'm actually being offered? It's packed with keywords, it's packed with search engine optimization terms, and then some suppliers may wonder, why am I not getting any business? The reason for that may be quite simply that the buyers just do not understand what it is that you're offering. So again, we want to work with buyers, work with suppliers to make those offerings clear and simple and easy to use. So there's two frameworks that I look after at the moment. First of all, GCloud, which again is about cloud-based software, infrastructure, platform, and service, and then the specialist cloud services you may need for consultancy support or help in moving you from where you are now onto the cloud. And Digital Services Framework, which is about getting together the people, the teams that you need to build those services. So what we're about is creating a transparent and competitive marketplace. All of the information, all of the services, all the pricing on GCloud is available to anybody to find. Anybody can look at it, it comes up in Google. Occasionally we do get your query, is there a security breach? No, it's exactly what you're supposed to be able to do. It is open, and we know from comparing prices from iteration to iteration of the GCloud framework, it is driving down prices. We also know from comparing rate cards on GCloud to the later Digital Services Framework that the DSF rate cards are actually lower. So again, there has been that downward drive. But one of the most important things for me is that the GCloud and also the DSF is about opening up reducing barrier to entry for smaller, medium enterprises. It gives why is that important? It gives government the access to innovation. It offers lower prices, and also because the SMEs are local based, it can actually help local based economies. So recently, this year, we have seen a massive ramp up in spend with the SMEs. In the last 6 months, there's been a spend of £82 million, which is nearly the same as the whole for the previous 2 years. Total sales in GCloud at the end of July were 271 million. Got the latest figures in this morning. The GCloud figures now, and this is totally quoted, are now up to 314 million. So we are averaging now around about £25 million a month, as opposed to £7 million a month where we were a year ago. And again, the majority of those sales by value and by volume are going to SMEs. The split between, which I'll come back to, between central government and the wider public sector remains at the 80-20 split. So again, I don't know whether you can see the lines at the back, probably not. But as Brian said, sales have gone through the £250 million mark. We've now actually just gone through the £300 million barrier. So with the majority of that money going to SMEs, and that growth continues. Again, looking at the top 10 buying organisations across central government, Home Office, Ministry of Justice, Cabinet Office being amongst the top 3. And again, looking at the wider public sector, Health and Social Care Information Centre, Bristol City Council, Harrow and Hounslow Council, the top three there amongst the wider public sector. Now, I just want to dangerously touch on the subject that Brian mentioned earlier, that there has been some comment about low take-up of G-Cloud across local authorities. What I will say is that that is not to say that local authorities have not done a fantastic job in using G-Cloud, using cloud services in modernising services. Of course they have, and I'm sure that you all know that. And it's not about central government versus local government. If we start off on those polarities, we've failed. We're not going to get anywhere. It's about making the most of what we've got, what makes most sense commercially. Should there be a common commissioning platform that meets everybody's needs? So earlier this year, we met up with Socitm to look at a joint piece of research we could do to say, what is it that we could possibly do with the digital marketplace to make it more attractive to local authorities? Because does it make more sense for taxpayers if there be a single commissioning platform? But of course, fully aware that, well, obviously, we don't have a mandate over local government. But for me, it's just about sharing experiences and ways of working to deliver the best value for money. So with G-Cloud, we've also helped the UK economy to grow. A survey we carried out earlier this year with successful suppliers, 29 of those responded. They have created 356 new jobs. We hear all the time about how suppliers are expanding. Yeah, 356 may not sound much in the grand scheme of things, but most of those who replied to those were SMEs, and in many cases we actually doubled workforces. Again, one particular company, I2N, their turnover has risen from £500,000 in 2011 to £3.5 million today as a result of G-Cloud. Some of you may have seen that map before, where on the left-hand side it shows that in 2010 the IT supply chain consisted of a large amount of work done by a very small number of companies based around London and the motorways down to Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight. Whereas today, the supply chain is over 300 businesses across the UK. And again, that can only be useful for the local economies. It's also cheaper. We commissioned an independent piece of research earlier in this year, which showed that there was a minimum saving of 20%, which came from sort of quantitative analysis of rate cards and so on. Whereas the larger change that can be enabled by G-Cloud can drive our average efficiencies of 50%. So for every £1 spent, there's a £1 saved. But there are also case studies out there of up to 90% savings made in some areas. And again, we are working on publishing those case studies with everybody. Quote I love, it's very, very wordy, but the Royal Liverpool and Broadgreen University Hospital Trust were doing a procurement, going through a traditional tender process. They stopped, it was too expensive. They then used G-Cloud instead. We mentioned faster. Once you define your requirement, to actually work through the digital marketplace to find the suppliers you need can be incredibly quickly. And indeed, so what one particular case study we used, Wiltshire Council introducing the case management system from the point of deciding they need to have a new case management system. The first person being trained on that system was 6 months. 6 months. So you imagine the old procurement process going through ODUs, and they actually didn't start off the tender process by then. It's also a lot simpler to use. The HS2 CIO, who heads up the HS2 programme, big supporter of G-Cloud, again, one of the people that just cannot understand what it is, why do people think it's so complicated. Indeed, I have heard quotes from some areas, the fact that it is so easy to use means that there must be something wrong with it. There isn't. So finally, just talking now about where we want to go, take the digital marketplace forward. So the start at the outset, at the moment, it's currently there for G-Cloud. The digital services framework will be on there early next year. We are talking to the PSM team, and again, that catalogue will be available across the marketplace. So we're then sort of looking at what other frameworks might it be appropriate for. So again, as buyers, people running IT projects, you have a single place to go with everything that you need to buy to deliver that project in one place, and also with being able to have your own account, be able to easily share what those contracts are, have complete audit trails, and so on. So thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Tony. Okay, your opportunity to put some questions to it. You practiced answering questions before, and one of you went into it. Let's hope a few more of you maybe have this time. Any hands up to want to put a question to Mr. Tamija Dekadvan? Question one up here, the 2/3 of the way up. Could you introduce yourself as well when you start your question?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris Swanwick from Byte Software Services. We're on the G-Cloud framework, and we have lots of discussions with our customers about it. One problem that we found is that, yes, it's faster, there's lots of new cloud services coming online all the time, and when a customer comes to us and we define what the customer wants, that may not be on our actual list of services that we've got there. We've now got to wait 6 to 8 months potentially in order to actually be able to say to the customer, yes, we can have that. Is that process ever going to change so we can actually get services onboarded quicker for what the customer desires?
Yeah, what we've been waiting for is for the new EU procurement regulations to come in around dynamic purchasing frameworks. So we are talking to the Treasury solicitors now about how could we actually possibly introduce that for G-Cloud from G7 sometime next year. But again, there's very early plans, but yes, we are hoping to move across to a dynamic system as soon as we get, as soon as the law allows us to do it.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, next I see a hand right at the very back there. Opportunity for the man with the mic to get some exercise.
Hi, Sander Christel, Staffordshire County Council. I think G-Cloud works really, really well, particularly with regards to consultancy services. Where we're still seeing that the price is slightly high is regarding infrastructure, and suppliers particularly tell us that that's because of the short-term length of the contracts. Are you going to change that?
No, there's no plans at the moment because I know that the 2-year contract length has been an issue for some areas. What we say is at the end of 2 years, you can't spend beyond that. There's no reason why, if you go through the similar sort of selection process that you went at the outset, you couldn't then place that contract back with the same supplier. But you do have to go through that same assessment process. But in answer to your question, no, there's no plans at the moment to lengthen that 2 years, because evidence we've seen is that it does drive prices down. The suppliers are saying to you that it is a barrier, and now can offer you more expensive prices through G-Cloud as a result of that. Please let us know, because then we'll go and have a chat with them.
Okay, next up. We've got a couple from this side, so somebody down there. There you go.
Nick O'Reilly, Derby City. Picking up on the last comment really, we're looking at using cloud frameworks for software, and actually we don't want to be buying software applications and only running from that short period of time. The cost of change is significant, so if you need such a short term, be it 2 years or 4 years, it actually works against the business in terms of moving forward to software as a service. So I do think that does need to be reinvestigated.
Yeah, I mean, all I'll say is from the research we've done about looking at prices, from iteration to iteration, they're actually going down rather than up.
You need to be considering the cost of change, because you have to change. If you change your software, your training, your reuse costs, your migration costs, it's not just about pricing.
No, I totally agree. Which is why I said that when you come into that end of that 2 year contract, all of those arguments need to go into the equation about whether you are actually going to change supplier or not. Again, it's not about just running that, doing that catalogue search, finding out, okay, it is another software supplier offering us something cheaper, so you have to switch. You don't. You still have to go through the business case process to determine which is the most economically advantageous way of doing things.
Two more then. Whichever order you'd like to take, and then there was one hand there and one on the aisle on this side.
Yes, Martin Ferguson, Policy Director of Socitm. Tony, thanks for that. Just wondered how you see digital marketplace sitting alongside other services like the Crown Commercial Services last local authority software agreement.
Yeah, we're working very closely with Crown Commercial Service, obviously, in what we're doing. And you know, they're also thinking about a new Crown marketplace. So what we want to do is to come up with a solution that just makes the most sense to the users. You know, will everything be on the marketplace, you know, digital marketplace? Will it be elsewhere? So we are working with CCS to work out what's the best way of servicing those other frameworks.
And there's a gentleman on the aisle this side.
It's only me. It's Chris Haynes again. Yeah, I've become a really big fan of G-Cloud and would recommend people buy it, but I'm not here to sell it for you. And I really like the way you've accentuated what are real positives about time and the procurement nightmare that we've gone into. One thing I would like you to pay attention to in the future is, yes, there are lots of suppliers on there, but being that it's still in its infancy, I'd like more effort focused on the quality of some of those suppliers. There are a lot of crap suppliers on the G-Cloud. And I'd like to see things about how those, and I don't want them accredited out, I want to get some fair idea of whether these are the companies that people in government should be dealing with.
Okay, right. One of the things that we want to try and do is join up or create these sort of social communities of interest. So where a particular buyer or somebody is talking about looking at procuring a service and speaking to other buyers that have done that recently, we will not be going down a TripAdvisor route. We get all sorts of legal trouble if we did. But one thing we do want to do a lot more of is putting buyers in touch with buyers and IT teams in touch with IT teams, because simply some examples I quoted there. It is through that collaboration and that working together. That's what you're going to look at who really are the quality suppliers.
Any more questions? Probably just got time for one more before we go on to the next session. If anybody has one last burning question yet? Gentleman there. Lady, sorry, good question. All I saw was the hand, I do apologise.
Hello, my name is Valda Williams, I'm from Cheshire East Council. Just picking up from that last point, we've invested in a number of G-Cloud procurements, but I have to say that my frustration is with the quality assurance around the contracts, which are just not fit for purpose. I seem to be spending huge amounts of time with these suppliers, sorting out all their contracts, which just don't reflect a G-Cloud environment. Is there any quality assurance that you can start adding to some of the suppliers that are on the list?
Yes, we can. One of the things that we've done is, I know there's been a lot of issues around services being on there that are not cloud services, they're out of scope. By all means, please do let us know if you come across any of those, because we do investigate them. Crown Commercial Services look at them, and if they shouldn't be on there, then they'll take them off. And I think that's just, so there's a small team now set up who are doing that permanently. If there are issues around T's and C's, they could look at those as well. But of course, obviously, the whole thing around G-Cloud is around suppliers' terms and conditions of service. There are the overarching conditions of service, obviously, conditions of contract. For the G-Cloud framework, which will always win over the supplier T's and C's. But again, as I said, the whole thing around G-Cloud, when it was first started up, was fit to be around suppliers T's and C's and not around the normal volumes of government ones. But if there are things that you know about that are clear enough for purpose, again, let us know and have a look at them.
Okay, thanks Tony. We'll have to call a halt to questions on that one. Thanks very much to those of you who have put your questions to Tony. A big thank you to Tony as well. Of course, he's got the train up immediately before this and he's getting the train immediately back. So very good of him to make the effort to come up here. So if you can just show your thanks and appreciation.